I'm Richard Randall. Welcome back to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker. She's the host of the program, and this is the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate. And it does it with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Now, Barb, many home sellers fear the inspection. Many people think that most buyers want to purchase their home as is, but what are some of the home inspection nightmares that people need to prepare for when they're selling their home?
Well, Richard, let's talk first about what are the rules and or industry norms and standards when it comes to doing home inspections. First of all, our state licensing does not define in hardly any way the job description of a real estate agent performing the role of either a buyer's agent or transaction broker helping somebody buy a home. And so we never know what to expect when it's time for the buyers to conduct their due diligence, which is doing an inspection, making sure they have all the information about the house, as well as prepare for their loan, getting ready for closing. So many times I see that agents are what I call too lazy or don't really want to be bothered to attend their buyers' inspections. And it was funny. I was talking to my son about this yesterday. I said, how would you feel if you were buying a home and you had your own agent and the agent said, oh, yeah, don't worry. You can go to the inspection if you want, but I'm not going to be there. I've got something else to do. How would you feel about that? And he goes, I don't like it. Because people don't do this every day.
Yeah.
And so just the other day, I got a text from an agent going, oh, I can't make the inspection. Can't you just give the inspector the combo and let him in and do his thing? Well, here's the problem with that. In the state of Colorado, there is no license to be a home inspector. So anything could happen. In fact, in the past month, twice, just on my own listings, I had agents go do an inspection, didn't tell me they were doing an inspection. And I know for a fact that one of them, they let the inspector in and did not attend. And she almost admitted it in writing. It came very close. But I'm like, all right, am I going to die on that hill? I don't want to spend time. It actually is license law violation to give somebody access to a property without permission. It's also license law violation to give it just, you can't go into somebody's houses without permission, whether they're vacant or not. You can't give access. That's one thing that is against the rules. So a lot of times they just don't want to go. It's like, well, I don't want to waste my time spending 3 hours watching an inspector do an inspection. They're going to send me a report anyway. Why should I be bothered? But who are they working for? They're certainly not working for the seller. They're working against the seller, and they're trying to get information so the buyer can decide whether or not they're going to close on the property or bail out, either one, right? And so the problem is on my side is that since there is no license for a inspector, anything could happen during an inspection, right? And we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're qualified to do it. And even when the agents do attend, sometimes they try to negotiate directly with the sellers. I've had them even literally today, an agent called me and said, well, your seller is at the house. And I'm like, yes. And she's like, but it's not normal for the seller to be at the house during the inspection. I said, are you asking me to tell the seller to leave their own home? Oh, well, no, but it's just not professional. And I'm like, okay, I get that might be what you are used to. However, there's a full-on blizzard going on today. And guess what? If he don't want to leave his own home, he doesn't have to, right? And so I don't know. I just think that they don't really know what is reasonable, right? I've had inspectors who aren't licensed and have nothing to do with the transaction other than being a subcontractor for the buyer, right? Actually order my clients to leave their own home during the inspection. And I've told them, I said, look, don't be surprised if this happens. I had one guy it did happen to after I said, look, don't be surprised if he asks you to leave your own home. And he was ready for it. He was surprised when it happened, but he goes, no, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to stay and you're going to leave. And the inspector's like, but, I need to talk to my buyer. He's like, well, you can do that somewhere else. But I mean, it's a weird thing. I get that the buyer wants to do, all of their due diligence and make sure that the home is, to standard, because every home is going to come up with something on an inspection, right? But you really have to make sure that they don't damage the house. And I've had so many incidents where the inspectors have damaged the home. And per the contract, they are responsible. The buyer is responsible for any damage that the inspector does. However, they won't admit it. So let me give you a story. Just last month, we had a second sale with that client, and the inspector was there. The buyer's agent chose not to be there, but we were there representing our client. And the inspector grabbed the stair rail and started shaking on it really hard and pulled it off the wall. And then on the inspection objection, which is a form that says, all right, we want the seller to fix this and this and this, they asked the seller to fix it. And he was right there too. He's like, no, you broke that. We're not fixing that. And then the agent tried to push back, and we're like, honey, you weren't there. We were there. We saw it. So we're not doing that. And then they finally backed down. But anyway, I get that, sellers are very concerned of what could happen on an inspection. Most of them assume that the home is going to be sold what I call as is. Now, it doesn't even say that in the contract, that the home is sold as is, where is, with all its faults. Okay. But the buyers do their inspection in order to verify that, right? And it's their opportunity to bail out and get their earnest money back if the home does not meet their standard, or if they don't want to take on that level of repair, or they could ask for repairs, but that is a negotiable type of situation. There are about 33 different physical things about the house that come under scrutiny. And with the inventory being on the low side, some buyers will put in their contract that, oh, we're going to take the home as is, except for electrical, plumbing, appliances, roof, furnace, pretty much everything. So it's kind of like a noisy statement that they put in their contract that really doesn't mean anything. But because there's no license to be an inspector, you never know what you're going to get. Recently, I had a friend who was just a friend of the buyer do the inspection. I've had dad do the inspection. I've had a landscaper do an inspection. Some of the things that the sellers need to worry about that they should check up front are things like roofs, because we have so much hail damage in this climate that oftentimes they may not know that they have damage to their roofs. And so really check before you go on the market, check how much your deductible is for filing a claim, because sometimes the insurance companies will change the amount of the deductible that you originally agreed to just by sending you a new policy, and they won't really go over it. Most people don't read a 30-page document of their insurance policy. It's kind of boring. So I would check with that before you go on the market. But the big ticket things are typically you have to pay deductible for a roof, furnace replacement, electrical panels, sewer lines can be really expensive, septic, that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you're kind of ahead of it. And many times we'll see furnaces come under scrutiny. I just have one seller that had to replace his furnace. Water heaters. So this particular system is mostly a gas burning appliance. And you could go buy a water heater in your own home and stick it in. And I see people doing that all the time. But the inspectors will come and say, well, you have to have a permit, right? Then the homeowner can go get a permit and, to get that resolved. Oftentimes electrical will get tagged for various things. So they'll ask a licensed electrician to look at it. There is a brand of electrical panel. Actually, there's a couple of them, but the main one is a Federal Pacific panel that in most cases, the buyer's going to ask for it to be replaced. just because it has a history of catching on fire when the circuit overloads. However, if you can get a licensed electrician to sign off on it, you may not have to. Some of those Federal Pacific panels are okay. Plumbing, many times you can't see issues with plumbing. And I get a kick out of these inspectors. They'll bring this, what I call a little infrared gadget that will read temperature changes behind the wall. And all of a sudden they'll say, oh, you got a plumbing leak, but they don't know. It's just a temperature change. I had one that had just taken a shower. So then he had to pay a licensed plumber to tell him there was nothing wrong with the plumbing. So septic, of course, and sewer lines could be very costly, and most people don't check it. The lender really doesn't care about these systems. It's not an important thing. But if you are getting ready to put your home on the market, we have systems in place to help our clients just so they're prepared when they're under contract and their buyer does an inspection. My name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the host of this show, your real estate voice and the broker owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. Barb has the buyer's team. And so we're talking about red flags and home inspection nightmares. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple of things that you can do to prepare your home for sale. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. She's the host of the program. And if you're interested in selling, you want to give Barb a call, 719-301-3900. And we're talking, Barb, about how to avoid those red flags on home inspections for sellers. Barb, what are some other home inspection issues that have come up in your career?
Oh, I see sometimes the decks get scrutinized. They might see rotted wood underneath the structure of the deck, which most people don't check. It's a good idea to check those or have them repaired. Sometimes trip hazard of fractured concrete could be an issue. Some people test for wells. Now, if the buyer's getting a VA loan, the lender will require a bacteria test and sometimes a metals test. So getting the results back from these tests could take weeks and weeks. However, we do have a vendor that can do it in less time. So if that's something, if that's you and you have a well, you might want to at least plan on that's going to happen. But sometimes these inspectors don't know what they're doing. Just last summer, I had an inspector that went out to a house, turned on every single faucet inside the house and every single faucet outside the house, and let it run for 3 to 4 hours. And then the well ultimately got kind of sucked dry. So that evening I get a text from the seller going, how come there's sand in my sink in my tub? Why is that happening? And I knew exactly as soon as I got that text. I'm like, no, this guy did not. He sucked the well dry, cavitated the pumps, and basically pulled sand up through the well into the plumbing fixtures and into the tub and the sink. So they don't have to run the water that long to see if it's working, but just some of these inspectors don't know what they're doing. So you really need somebody that has your back during, especially if you have systems like this. Broken seals on windows, they're cosmetic. They're fairly easy to get fixed. The VA and FHA loans will require any broken glass to be repaired. And, most of the time, this is not the time for the buyer to ask for ridiculous upgrades like all new windows, granite counters, appliances, that kind of stuff. They will ask occasionally. Like I recently had a buyer that looked at one of my listings. The inspection was perfect, just clean and serviced the furnace. But then they said, oh, by the way, we also want the refrigerator, washer, and dryer, just because the agent forgot to put it in the original contract. And that created the deal to blow up, which is just craziness. So, you're going to see stuff go on during inspections, and that's why we try to prepare our clients for it. And I've had crazy things happen. I've had the inspectors stick their foot through the drywall because they stepped in the wrong place in the attic. I've had them set the house on fire. I recently talked to an agent that said an inspector poured water on the heat exchanger to see if there were air bubbles coming out, to see if there was a leak, which trashed the furnace because it caused the heat exchanger to rust. So We don't let that happen to our clients. We offer what we call a certified pre-owned home program where we get them ready for the inspection. So if you're interested in that, give us a call at 719-301-3900 or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
That is Barb Schlinker. She's the host of the program, Your Real Estate Voice, also Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. She's the proprietor and the originator of that. And if you're thinking about making a move, call Barb at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about how much does it cost to sell your home with a net calculator. Stay tuned for that.